Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Talent Pool. This is an unplanned episode, but off the what is it, the seat of our pants, off the cuff.
Yeah, we're flying by the seat of our pants.
We're flying, but I feel like I'm mixing my metaphors here. But I made this can of worms, and now I'm gonna lie in it. So that's a malapropism. One of my favorites ever. All right, y'all. So it's already gone off the rails, and we just started. Welcome to the Talent Pool. Today, I have a very special guest with me. My friend Kevin. We know each other from working with Share More Stories. We're both here in Richmond. We're obviously like live together in real life, which is very exciting. And one of the things that I promised y'all as I'm getting the Talent Pool going is to bring in as many experts as I can and to share with you everything that I know about building and leveraging your professional network to get a job. Well, this is a whole different element of this, and that is that Kevin is a storyteller. Like, this is what he does. And we know that creating compelling stories and being able to tell them well can make people see you differently. And so one of the most important parts in my mind of your job search is to be able to tell your story
Absolutely
well. So I wanted to bring Kevin on and just like have you tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, why you're obsessed with stories, and then give us a framework for creating a compelling story about yourself.
That's perfect.
Awesome. And while you're doing that, I'm going to see if I can get this whole talent pool thing off of here because I don't know how to do it.
Yeah, sure. So my name is Kevin Levin. I am a storyteller, a writer, and communications fanatic. I love everything that has to do with being able to connect on a deeper level, whether that's interpersonally, whether that's business to consumer. I just love how you can create a whole world inside someone's head just by what you decide to tell, and how you can connect on a deeper level by finding intersections between what you've done and what you're trying to convey, if that makes sense.
I love that. Like, it's such an important part of who we are because you can have a title at work, right? Like, I'm in sales. What does that mean? What does that say to you? But when you know me, right, like the clumsy snort laugher person who's completely irrelevant, it changes your perception of where I fit in your world, right? And
Absolutely.
Like how you want to interact with me or not. It's totally fine.
Yeah, if you say you're in sales, that's so abstract.
Yeah.
But if you go a little bit deeper and you provide some context, well, this is who I am. This is what it means for me to be in sales. This is what my role looks like on a day-to-day. Then you're able to provide a little bit more substance for someone to actually be able to process and digest and determine whether or not they can relate, whether or not they care.
Yeah, I mean, that's a big thing, right? It's like, do you care or do you not care?
Yeah.
When you get to know a person, then the human instinct, I think, is to build some sort of care about them, right?
Yeah.
Like, either you care to know them better and help them or be around them more, or sometimes you care to not, right? And that's okay too, right? It happens. Yeah. So now, have you always been obsessed with stories, like even as a kid?
Even as a kid, I had a great aunt that was actually a professional storyteller, and she would travel around the world telling oral traditions or telling oral stories that were collected from her travels all around the world.
That's amazing. What was your favorite?
My favorite was the story of this spider named Anazi. And it's basically the story of a spider that traps a lion.
Yeah.
And in
I know
short, it's a powerful anecdote for how the collaboration between a group of people is able to do so much more than the individual effort of just one.
Which is why we're here, y'all. Like, this is literally the whole point of the talent pool. So maybe we should have named it after that parable. But like, this is the whole point, is if we can collectively work together to help people who have been laid off or who are job searching to expand their network and meet more people, then they're more likely to find their next dream job, which is amazing. Y'all, pop into the comments if you're watching, and let us know, what's your favorite story? What's your favorite parable? We want to hear it. We want to share it. So pop in there. So, okay. So you get this from, it was your great aunt?
It was my great aunt. Yeah.
Okay. Do you say aunt or aunt?
I say usually aunt, but I just copied you because
you're a chameleon.
Yeah.
I'm a hick. It's at my aunt, but my kids call their aunts their aunts because they grew up in New England. And so sometimes I'll be like, oh, your auntie, whatever. But then all of my relatives
say
like it's an aunt. Yeah. That's another one. Pop in the comment. Is it aunt or aunt? I don't know.
How will they like, they'll put an accent?
I don't know. I also one of my favorite questions to ask, and probably one of my like most well-performing posts on LinkedIn, was it was a poll, and the question was, do you pronounce it data or data? But obviously they're spelled exactly the same way. And people kept popping in and they were like, I hate that I read these differently, even though, they're homonyms, and so like, whatever. I like to fuck with people's brains. That's my thing.
Yeah.
Okay, so you grew up hearing stories, having a compelling storyteller in your world. Was there a time in your life that you remember where you started to think, like, shift stories from just being something that were nice to hear and like exciting to be able to spend that time with your family members to like, oh, this is a passion that I could build my career off of?
Yeah. I want to say it was probably in college. I decided to study public relations for my bachelor's degree, and that's when there was this shift and I was able to understand stories not just as fun, nice ways of conveying details and information to something that has the power to shift our perception, that has the power to shift our understanding of things that really matter, whether that be in terms of our own personal lives or politics or whatever.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, like, that's really amazing. And then I decided to further my studies into strategic communication, looking at like government comms and trying to understand, on perhaps one of the biggest scales, how is it that governments decide what it is that they communicate, when they decide to communicate, how they decide to communicate. And I suppose it was that academic path that deepened my connection to stories and my passion for storytelling.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And then you just like happen to run into James Warren one day, and he was like, hey, you like stories, I have the job for you.
More or less. More or less, that was how it happened.
So what do you do for Share More Stories?
So for Share More Stories, I am on the marketing and growth team. And so I support the development of social media content, blogs, soon to be a video feature.
That's my influence.
Yeah, soon to be a video feature. But the biggest thing is helping James and the team reflect on what has been done thus far with Share More Stories up to this point, and then turning that into graphics, content that helps tell Share More Stories story to our audience.
Right. Which, if you are a company that does research and analytics and helps other companies tell their story well, like, that's a big job to have, right? Like, you have to be really good at telling the Share More Stories story, because if y'all are shit at telling your story, nobody's going to trust you to help, create theirs.
But a relatable point for all the listeners is it's really challenging to tell your own story.
So hard.
Sometimes it feels like, oh, am I being a little bit too prideful, or am I being too boastful if I share this aspect of the story, or if I tell it in this way? Like, how will people perceive? There's all these different feelings that are
Mhm.
natural that come up when you start to share what your experience has been. And so I think where I come in is I'm able to talk to the team, I'm able to talk to James, the founder, listen to what he has to say, what he has to share about his experiences, and then process that as basically a third party or just another human being and be able to transform that into something that might be able to connect with someone who's never heard of the company before.
Right. So would you recommend for people who are looking to tell their story better in job interviews or on their resume or through their content or comments on LinkedIn, would you recommend that they try to find kind of a third party like you, somebody that they can bounce their story off of and get feedback?
I would definitely recommend that. I think it could be a family friend, it could be family, it could be just a colleague at work. Anyone that you are willing to sit down with for, it doesn't have to be super long, it could be 15 minutes, 10 minutes, just to say, here's what I'm thinking about related to how I'm trying to pitch myself, or in terms of prepping for an interview. What sticks with you, what stands out, and just being able to get another person's perspective on how it lands can be super helpful to just uh, prepare yourself for what the experience of connecting with an HR professional or connecting with a hiring manager might actually be like.
Right.
So
I
I
love
highly
that.
recommend it.
You can also come on the talent pool if you want and tell your story here and leverage my network and your own network and everybody to get feedback as well. Ooh, Steven. Okay, I have to tell you, this man is like one of my favorite humans in the entire world. I just met him in real life in Dallas a couple of weeks ago, and I'm like walking around the conference where I'm at, this automotive conference. I'm literally there just because all my friends are there. I have no business purpose at all. And he comes up and he's like, I know who you are. And I want to tell you that the way you show up on LinkedIn has like changed my life, the way that I interact with people. And so I'm obviously like ugly crying. And in case anybody wants to know, I not only snort when I laugh, I also snort when I cry. So it's a thing.
At least you're consistent.
I am consistently inconsistent, I guess. But let's see. So Steven says, how many talented people are missed by companies because their resume doesn't really reflect that person? Finding ways to effectively tell your story, increasing your exposure is so valuable and missing. That I love that, right? Like that's if we appear as humans to other humans, then we're much more likely to kind of stand out from the crowd of resumes.
Absolutely.
So given that, like, we kind of jumped the gun because we're talking about, oh, if you have a story, let people hear it and give you feedback. But how do you create a story in the first place? Do you have a framework that you can share with our listeners about like a simple way to start to frame your story that will connect with other humans?
I would say the framework that I would suggest is to consider, first off, a lot of people think that you have to have, I don't know, certifications or some kind of like extensive like background in writing or something along those lines to be an effective storyteller. But that's not the case. Not to say that having those certifications and that experience doesn't help you become a better writer and become a better storyteller.
Right.
But naturally, humans are born storytellers. There's actually this theory that I'm a huge proponent of. Everybody knows that humans are classified or categorized as Homo sapiens, right? And that means the wise beings, basically.
Okay.
But there's this social
There are
theorist.
some exceptions.
There's a social theorist named Walter Fisher who proposed maybe a better classification for humans would be Homo neurons, which is the storytelling being.
Oh, okay.
Because it doesn't matter if you're trying to convey a basic objective fact, like the color of the bricks behind us. The way you share that information is through the context of a story. And so I think the basic approach that I would recommend in terms of how do I share a story is to take it to a very familiar place. Consider, I'm trying to share something important to my mom or my dad or my significant other. Pick someone that's close to you, that you care about, and that you would be interested in having a conversation with. And say, if I'm trying to share a story with a loved one, what would I say? And then literally just write out a really short script, a paragraph or two about what you would say, and then read it. Literally read it out loud and ask yourself, how does that sound? That's when having a third party, having a friend or a loved one come in and listen to you is super helpful, because then they can say, oh, like I thought this part was really compelling, or oh, like maybe I would focus less on this point and more on something else.
Right.
I would say take it to a really basic, familiar place. That way you can just get some content out. You can let some of the ideas in your head make it out of your head so that you can actually begin to decide, how do I want to approach this when it's game time or when it matters?
We were literally just talking about this a minute ago, y'all. So I have the worst case of what I call tabula rasa syndrome, blank slate syndrome. The moment I look at a blank piece of paper, it's like I don't even know how to tie my own shoelaces, right? Like I don't know my name. I don't know anything. I can't. You could give me a writing prompt and I'll be like, I don't have a brain cell. Not even one, right? But if I just start typing, I don't even have to type on a topic, right? I can just start, like today I am wearing a beige sweater and it matches my shiny shoes really well, which it does actually. Wait, ooh, check out my shirt. This is my new shirt. It says, behind every great woman, there's a shit ton of other dope ass women.
That's nice.
Yeah, it's my favorite. I always have the weirdest shirts, but so if you have tabula rasa syndrome, sometimes it's just get started. Like start typing out what you're wearing today or what your favorite food is, or literally anything to make that page not be blank anymore, right?
Absolutely. I mean, so many of us boil down our experience to, this is the skill set that applies to the application that I'm trying to work on, or that applies to the role that I'm applying for. But that skill set didn't just appear magically. There's some experience behind what it required to actually gain said skill set.
So you didn't just wake up awesome. You actually had to like.
You had to. There's a few in between pieces.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, not for me, but maybe for Kevin.
For me, that's my story. So I would definitely say that when it comes to telling stories, it's important to note that they're significant in the interview process for 3 compelling reasons.
Okay.
A story will save your life. I like to think of it in terms of CPR. It's an acronym. Because stories help us connect, they help us persuade, and they help us recall. Not necessarily, they help others recall what we say, why we said it, and the context that surrounds our information, the context that surrounds our facts or our key points.
Is that right? Connect, persuade, and recall. That's what stories help us do.
That's what they help us do. And that's significant because you got to imagine, if you're a hiring manager and you narrow down your search and you have an interview with a few different people, you might remember some of the data points. So-and-so worked on X amount of projects and has these objective skills or proficiencies, right? But what you're likely to recall is the context surrounding their responses, the context surrounding their experience. And so many times it's been shared with me that, I think Maya Angelou said it, people are more likely to recall how they made you feel than.
Right. People won't remember what you do. They'll remember how you make them feel.
Exactly.
I think that's probably a super bastardized quote because she's like incredible and everything that flows out of her mouth is amazing. But
yeah, to that effect of the quote that I probably misparaphrased, there's something really significant about being able to envision someone else's experience, and the only vehicle for doing that is a story. Right?
Yeah.
And so beyond just the data points that are significant, though a little bit stale by themselves. The story helps couch that into something that's a little bit more palatable, something that's more digestible, and a lot of times like more relatable.
Mm-hmm.
And it's that relatability factor that helps so many hiring managers decide, well, is this candidate going to be a good fit for our company culture? Is this candidate going to be able to connect with our team members to help us accomplish whatever our goals are for the quarter, for the year, et cetera?
Right. There's a big difference between saying I achieved 120% of my goal or walking into a job interview and saying, you know what, the first quarter of the year that I achieved 120% of my goal was probably the worst quarter of my sales career.
Mm.
And here's why.
Right.
I failed at this and this and this. And then I took a step back and I said, what is going wrong? I evaluated, I changed, I learned, I changed. And then even with that the shortfall in the first quarter, I managed to come in above goal. 120% goal is fucking amazing, right? Like it is. But the gumption, grit, fortitude, willingness to look failure in the face and figure out how to overcome it tells a story that a hiring manager is going to look at and remember and say, when I look at all of these candidates, I maybe have 4 candidates who all achieved over their goal. They told me that they did. There's one that I remember what they did and how they did it. And that's the type of attitude that we want on our team. So I just want to go back here real quick. So interesting conversation around Chat GPT, Gary. It's so interesting to watch the way that people are using this tool to create stories. I could see using this to create a framework where you might go into Chat GPT and say, like, help me create a framework for a personal story about perseverance and sales, right? And then using that framework to which is a kind of probably a proven storytelling framework because it's a powerful technology, and then making it your own and create, like, that might be a really interesting way to do things. Something I do a lot is I'll turn on Zoom and hit record and just tell a story. Most of the time I share it on here though, so y'all see it, but then I upload it into a program called otter.ai. It's OTTER.ai, and transcribe it. And if I have to write a story, I'll just copy that, paste it, and then change it up so that it, it has my cadence in the way that I talk. Andrew's one of my favorite humans in the entire world. Like, he's just amazing. He was on my Club Fuck It Bucket. Fantastic. But he says stats tell, but stories sell. And you have to remember that when you're in a job interview, your whole job is to sell yourself as the right candidate for this. So everybody's in sales. Daniel Pink says it. What else do we have? Oh, Steven, I love you so much. Stories also connect emotionally and generate feelings. People may forget what you said, but they will remember how you made them feel. Maya Angelou again.
Thank you, Steven.
Very powerful in an interview situation. So, and Steven's built also an entire business around telling stories. So that's awesome. And then what do we have here? Gary again. Specifically in a resume, you get very few words, small part of a single page in order to catch the attention of a hiring official. Check out the concept of the 3-word rebellion. I've never heard of that, but we're going to have to check it out. And Gary, if I dig it, then maybe I'll have you come on the talent pool and walk us through that. But it is true. Like, you have only a certain amount of space. So another way that you can start to tell your story and connect with people is not just in the job interview, but before. And we talk about this a lot, which is engaging with your community on LinkedIn. So later on this week, I will be coming on and talking to you about the tips and tricks that I've learned from some absolute crazy, amazing humans who do this. I didn't make this stuff up, but Leah Turner, Ariel Lee, Amy Wills, Josh Braun, there are a ton of people out here. Even James Warren, who is the co-founder of Share More Stories, tells great stories, obviously, right? And talking about how you can use content, but even more than that, comments and engagement in your LinkedIn network to set the stage for you to be able to tell your stories in interviews and get more interviews, which is amazing.
Yeah.
So our time is up because we have to go get lunch. I'm hoping for Auntie Ning's because I have really all it is. Like, I love Filipino food. Like it's something I grew up with. It's a food of my heart. But more than anything, I just like to take the lumpia rolls and like put them on my lip and go, I must ask you a question. I can't help it. So just know that is something that will be happening, and I will make you all take pictures whenever we do it. So, so is there anything else that you want to share with everyone before we head out for the day?
I would definitely say on that point that Gary shared about the resumes, I think there's a cross industry standard that the resume should be a 1-page document with a specific font type, and that needs to cover a certain technical basis, certain experiential basis, and then maybe there's like an extra section, and that could be miscellaneous, and people do different things. With that, that's so much of who you are stripped down to the essence minus the context. And so like that creates an entry point to be able to say, okay, like you met a certain threshold to make it to the next step where you have a conversation with somebody. And it's in that conversation that you were able to furnish that essence with the context.
Right.
And that's so significant. You don't go into an interview and just repeat what's on the resume. That defeats the purpose. The resume gets your foot in the door. And once you're in the door, what people are looking for is, okay, I see here you have these technical expertises or you have these skills. Beyond that, who are you? Right. And I think that's the point from which, I guess, consider if your resume is just a teaser for your overarching story, you can, to some extent, prepare.
Right. This is where I think you're going with this, right? Is write your resume in such a way that it sets you up to tell the stories that you want to tell in the job interview that are going to highlight like your amazing skills and what makes you unique and those types of things.
Yeah. If you're teeing yourself up, you can decide how you want to position yourself for that next step. And so I just highly suggest considering, put yourself in the framework of not only does my story matter, but there's so much power in claiming the aspects of your experience that make you you. It might sound a little cheesy, but I promise you, say that to yourself in prep before going into an interview, and you might very well feel a little bit more empowered to knock your interview out of the park. So just take that with you and run with it.
I love that. That's so good. I mean, everyone has something about them that is special and unique. And I truly believe that for different seasons in our lives, that there are also like the perfect dream jobs and perfect dream teams. And sometimes they're not forever, right? Sometimes they're for a year or 2 years or 5 years. But if you put yourself out there and if you remember that who you are is so important, and there are people out there who will just love the fuck out of you because of that, not in spite of it, then you'll find those people and then tell them that story and they'll connect with you. So I love that. Last thing here. So Gary says, Greg Rosner is a guest you want for that. Awesome. Gary, hook me up in the DMs. And Squire is one of my all-time favorite humans. He's been on Club Fuck It Bucket, and I should definitely have him on here too. So with that, we are at the end of our time because otherwise I'm going to starve to death. But thank you so much for joining us. We will be here tomorrow. Is Thursday? I don't know days anymore.
Tomorrow's Thursday, yeah.
I have like typical ADHD time blindness. So tomorrow's Thursday. So we are here with a special guest. Tune in and see if we can find some network people and get things going for them. So with that, thank you so much for joining me live and in person, which is amazing. What y'all don't know, can I show you? Yeah. Okay. What you don't know is around the corner here. So we have Claire. Hello. We're all in this conference room, just like working our little faces off. and having fun. Know that Share More Stories is going to start going live. They're going to have a live stream.
That's right.
Maybe audio rooms,
Maybe.
potentially.
We'll see.
You can also find them on YouTube. Is that where you no? Where do you do your time with James?
The time with James, we are going to start putting that on LinkedIn through the
Okay,
live.
all right. So they're not like out there in public yet.
Not yet.
I have a secret.
Yeah, behind the scenes.
And it's there's like behind the scenes interviews with Kevin and James, the founders of Share More Stories. So you'll get to learn more about what they do. Follow Kevin, follow Share More Stories. Lots of amazing things coming from this team. And if you need help crafting your story, reach out. Our network is here to help in every way that we possibly can. And we'll see you tomorrow.